Hello, folks. Today is Tuesday, January 30th, 2024. My name is Todor Władów, and this is the 20th episode of Keeping It Realistic. You know the drill by now, but let's repeat it once again. In this show, in collaboration with Chaos, we're going through the projects posted in the Chaos Campus Facebook group within the last 7 days, talking about their strengths, but also pointing out their weaknesses and suggesting eventual ways to improve them. Remember, we do the show as a live event so that you can actively participate in it, in the discussion and the works, but also all the other topics that we mentioned during the show. So be welcome to do so, say hi or say what you think. It's always welcome. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you, to chat with you. It's really cool, so gladly do so. Today, we'll have some interesting projects to talk about. In the beginning, as usual, we will start by taking a brief look at our cover image for today's show. It's a very interesting and exciting mix of this pleasant, welcoming kitchen, this mysterious temple-like scene, and the minimalistic interior we see to the right with the face of Cillian Murphy on it. It's from the movie Oppenheimer. Probably a lot of you have already seen it. I still haven't. If so, gladly tell me what you think about this movie as well. The works were contributed by Flatson, Ravindu, and Reza. For Ravindu and Reza, this is the first feature, so congrats to them. And of course, congrats to our friend Flatson as well, for whom this is probably the, I don't know, maybe second or even third feature. Next, we want to talk about our monthly challenge. This will probably or obviously be my last reminder for this challenge. You know, it started in December 2023 and goes until January 31st, 2024, so until tomorrow evening. If you want to participate, please make sure to share your image until the end of tomorrow, because otherwise you won't be able to participate. Again, the first 3 best works will get prizes in form of licenses for Chaos Render software, as well as social media mention, which obviously is great exposure, especially seeing your name and your work next to the Chaos logo. This makes it very legit, very nice. So I totally recommend this. Of course, a small disclaimer here, as long as the work really meets the Chaos quality standards. So let's say in the end we only have 3 works that are submitted for this challenge, and let's say 2 of them aren't of really high, good visual quality. They will certainly receive their prizes, but they probably won't be shared, just so you know. I see Georgi and Abdi in the comments. Welcome, folks. Glad to see you here. How are you? How has your work been so far? It's only Tuesday afternoon, but yeah, usually a lot of stuff happens on Monday and Tuesday. Before we jump into the projects for today, I want to talk a bit about our show here, because there are some interesting news about it, or some interesting changes. You remember how last time I said that we want to keep the show a bit shorter, because usually it's around 2 hours, which is too long for the attention span of the normal human being. It's around 1.5 hours, and then people start losing focus. So we want to keep the show at 1.5 hours, and for that we do it already, to limit the number of works that we'll be talking about, discussing in this show, to 7 at max. Now, in the meantime, I had another talk with Claudio from Chaos, and we discussed it more. And now we want to take this even a step further by making the Keeping It Realistic show happen on a bi-weekly basis, so every 2 weeks. And let me explain our thoughts behind this. So, you know that we are introducing new shows to this group. In the beginning, it was only the Chaos Campus live show with Nikus. Later, the Keeping It Realistic show came as an addition to it, but it was like happening every week, so it became like the major show or the major event in the group. And now we have those other 3 shows that will be added on the Thursdays. So at some point there will be a lot for you to see, which of course is absolutely awesome, because there will be a wide spectrum of things to watch and to see from our industry. And let's say, while the Keeping It Realistic show, no, the Chaos Campus Live, so pardon me, concentrates more on introducing us these very successful big studios or artists, and the CG Architect podcast will introduce us to maybe not so popular but still amazing artists and studios from all over the world. The Keeping It Realistic show concentrates more on you and your work and your advancement, and the other 2 shows, they will have very different aspects. They will show very different aspects of our field. I know a bit about them, but I won't spoil it now. I will announce them one by one when I know everything about them, when I have talked to the people who are going to be doing them, so that I can really tell you and describe them the best prior to their start. But in the end, why I'm saying all of this is, with all of those shows, we want to make your life better. We want you to have this wide spectrum of different shows that you can watch whenever you want. But we don't want you to come into a situation where you have to choose which show you will be watching, because there are so many and you don't have enough time to watch them all. So in order to do so, we thought that it would be a good idea if we let the Keeping It Realistic show happen every 2 weeks. So this way you will be saving approximately 3 to 5 hours every month, and those hours you can invest in watching the other shows. And then the second main reason, and this is more of a personal one on my side maybe, but since I started the show, I haven't been able to actually actively participate in the group. Let me explain why. We want the Keeping It Realistic show to really be useful to you. So I think that, I know it sounds like too good to be true. Usually there is always a catch somewhere, but I think that after 20 episodes, facts speak louder than words, and you were able to see that this is not some kind of an advertisement show or product placement show for Chaos projects. We don't even only talk about projects that are done with Chaos projects. It's also not about me, self-promotional, about me or my studio, whatever. It's really about you and helping you grow and become a better artist. But in order to provide you with a really good quality show, it takes a lot of time for it to be prepared. And I usually start on Monday morning, and there is just a lot of work. I have to go through all the projects, take notes to all of them, then rework some of your image. For today's show, I have probably spent around 2 hours yesterday reworking images in order to show you what I actually mean with some of the changes that I suggest. Searching for references or articles or stuff that fits the topics that we talk about, refining my notes, making the cover image, and so on. Usually it just is the whole Monday and Tuesday are blocked by the show itself and the preparations for it. So when Wednesday morning comes, I just start taking care of my personal business, which is, working on my commercial projects or learning new stuff, making personal exercises, and so on. So this is why from Wednesday morning until Sunday evening, I just completely abandoned the group to concentrate on my personal stuff, because now I have 3 days to work on it instead of the usual 5 days as I used to have before the show started. So with the show now happening every 2 weeks, I will be able to have a bit more time on my hands, and I will be able to actually come back to the group and actively participate in it, interact with you. You know how it used to be, we would share memes, we would talk about music, we would discuss topics, and now I contribute a lot to the group through the show, but I'm not really a part of it anymore. So with our new idea, there would be two benefits for all of us. For you, it would be a more laid-back schedule regarding the show, so you won't be so busy having to watch the show every week at the same time. And for me, it would be me being more present in the group. And in the end, it will be a mix of me writing written feedback to you as I used to before the show started, partially, and keeping other projects to talk about during the show. So the show will probably cover stuff from 2 weeks, and I'll just pick the up to 7 of the most interesting and exciting projects to talk about for the show. So this is the new idea. We'll try it in February. Let me show you the calendar here. I think you can see it above my image. So the next show will be on Tuesday, February the 6th, because then we'll want to talk about the results of our challenge. But the show after that won't be on February 13th, but February 20th. And the show after which would be on March 5th. So just so you know, we'll try it for a few weeks and we'll see how it goes on our side and gladly also on your side. And for this, please share your opinions, share your feedback with me and with us. It's not only regarding the Keeping It Realistic show, but regarding all the shows or chaos in general, or me personally. You can always provide us with some feedback, because this show is the evidence how important feedback is. And I cannot guarantee that when you say or something or you have a good idea that it will be immediately implemented or implemented at all, but I can at least promise you that it will be considered. And to finish this, I will obviously keep an eye on the attendance list. So when I talk about a number of artists on one show, I'll try to talk about different artists on the next show, so that the show doesn't become one-sided, but is more diverse and varied in general. And with this being said, we can actually jump in to the projects for today and don't waste any more time. If you have any ideas or your opinion about what we just talked about, gladly share it in the comments. The first project for today is a good example of what I just talked about. Last week's show, we talked in depth about a work by Amjad here. So now I can actually skip this one. However, it is a pretty interesting project, so I will just, let's say, briefly mention it. Amjad says, "Hello, my design living room. I hope you like it. It's done in Revit, Blender, Cycles, and Photoshop. Regards, Amjad." Let's take a look at the images. I wanted to share this with you because this is an interesting project. It's very unique design, what we have here. It's obviously a pretty eclectic mix of very different styles that we see. So we see the classic architecture on the window or the floor. You see some Baroque elements with these moldings and a canopy on the ceiling. We have also very modern elements with the chairs or this coffee table, for example, and also very traditional furniture. You see this wooden table with baluster legs. So it's a wild mix, and if you like it or not, this is something which is up to your personal opinion, personal preferences. I personally, talking for myself, I see it as a bit of a mixed bag. There are some combinations that I don't like at all, and there are others that I very, very much dig. So we can briefly talk about this as well. First, it is this bare stone wall in combination with a golden or whatever this is molding here. Color-wise, those two fit together well. But material-wise, I don't think that a combination like this makes sense, especially if you have a bare wall like this, which usually is not a flat surface. It's almost impossible to actually combine it with a nice molding on it. The second thing, again, let's say this bare stone wall in combination with this wavy front cover out of these triangle tiles and this chain link patterned baseboard, let's call it like this. I think this combination looks kind of weird. I don't like it a lot. But again, it's a matter of perspective. Generally speaking, there are lots of materials, lots of styles, and I think that this doesn't deliver a harmonious image, which is not optimal in my opinion. However, some of the combinations that you achieved here, dear Amjad, are actually very, very nice. What I like particularly the most is the combination between this traditional table and the modern chairs and the decoration atop of the table. I think it looks really nice. And this is a situation where two styles that are different in their cores meet and actually make a very, very good and harmonious new thing together. Same thing with this Baroque, whatever you want to call it, molding, and this canopy here in combination with this lampshade chandelier. I think those work together also very well, and it looks really nice. Generally speaking about the atmosphere and the lighting here, I think that the lighting that you have and the adds to this kind of dark and a bit gritty atmosphere, and I like this. What I found a bit confusing, and this is why I asked you if some AI was involved in the post-production process, because the close-up here looks really like AI. It looks like it comes straight out of Midjourney, and obviously the whole scene isn't AI because we can see it from different directions. This is just a 3D model, and the stuff here we can also see on the table, so this obviously isn't as AI as well, but this close-up, it just looks so much like AI because of this artificially looking softness and blurriness to it that I found it to be confusing. You said it's not AI, so maybe it is just the way depth of field looks like in Psychos. I haven't used this software, so I cannot tell, but it's definitely over the top. The second one here is better, even though I find the depth of field still to be too strong. The last shot, nice and all. So generally speaking, I think it's great that you experiment not only with render techniques, but also with interior design in general. I think this is great and it's the right thing to do. Maybe only just work more with references that you study carefully, that you analyze carefully, so that you are able to extract the things that make them so nice and special and beloved and popular, whatever. Try to understand what they are and try to implement them in your work, because the way the images and the design are currently is a bit, it needs more clearance, it needs to be more precise, it needs to be better thought out in general. And I think you're on the right path, to be honest. And with this being said, we can move over to Tilina's work. You know how it is with Tilina's works. When he tries something new in the visual department, we always talk about it. Other than that, if he makes, let's say, his usual looking visuals, we just briefly go through them, and this is what we will do in this case as well. He writes, this is a multifunctional bamboo deck inspired by a bird nest. The bamboo deck welcomes visitors to relax, meditate, yoga, and bird watching. And let's take a look at this bamboo deck. Obviously, it is inspired by a bird in a nest. It's immediately visible. Personally, I find this bird here to be nicely stylized and turned into a functional building, which is great. When it comes to the nest, however, it's a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, those wavy sticks look like they resemble a nest. I agree with this, but at the same time, they kind of remind me of those, how are they called, defensive spike fences that one can build in survival crafting computer games. And to be honest, to have an association like this thing isn't just something out of computer games. It comes actually from these wooden defense barriers that castles used to have or fortifications used to have. So having something like this around your building as an association is rather something that keeps people away from the building instead of actually inviting them in. So I'm not sure if those sticks are the best solution when it comes to the visual resemblance of a nest, or if you cannot maybe use ornamental grasses instead. I think this would be a better substitute for the sticks. With this being said, everything else is pretty nice. Again, if you have some greenery next to the camera, gladly use some depth of field on it. But other than that, this is just a really nice project. Oh, and one more thing. The way you didn't cut off the tip of the bird, I also recommend not cutting off like this corner of the stairs, just for the sake of better and more calm composition. And that's it. Here we see the rear end of both your building, the rear exit of the building, and the bird. And it's just a cool project. And again, as always, I'm looking forward to the moment when you will be able to share some actual photos of your buildings being implemented, already being built or used. It would be awesome to see them in action. Wochu joined us. Hi man, nice to see you. Next we have the reminder for our monthly challenge. We already talked about this. So we'll move on to this small video by Mesh Mastery, which shows you how to use edge constraints. Personally, I use this function a lot because I don't work with box modeling. Some artists do. They make everything out of simple boxes. I tend to work with editable polys, and the more complex they are, the better, because everything hangs together. This is just my way of working. So using edge or face constraints is absolutely essential, and it's great. So thanks to Konstantinos for sharing this one. I see Flatson joined us. He says, oh, the audio sounds like a robot tail. Oh, okay. You're the first one to say this. The others are listening to me for 20 minutes already, and nobody said something about this. Do you still clearly hear me? Do you understand what I say, or should I look for some solutions or restart the stream eventually? How is it? Everything seems pretty fine on my side, to be honest. I see I have no error messages, or nothing is different than on any other show that we've had so far. So Abdi says it's all fine here. Flatson, I understand what you say. Well, I'm sorry that you hear me as a robot, but maybe this is better this way. How is it? Do you like it? do I need to change my voice to a robot one? If so, let me know. But as far as you can understand what I say, I will continue in order not to stop this stream. Muad joined us. Hey man, nice to have you here. We'll talk now about Manuel's work, also known as Habitat 4.3. He writes, hello all, this is a commercial project still in the works, so I would appreciate any feedback. This is another example of, Manuel asked for feedback, and luckily it was Amjad and Chris who actually gave him the feedback he wanted, which is awesome. Always a joy to see something like this. But I would have also helped Manuel with his work if I was there. But again, due to preparing the show and then having just a very limited amount of time to do my own work, I just leave the group and then just join it again a week later. So yeah, I hope this will change now that the shows will happen every 2 weeks instead of every week. We'll see. Again, let me know what you think about it now or after we start implementing it. Keep us updated, keep me updated, and Chaos, and not only me, but also the hosts of all the other shows, because we're still in this phase of this group where you as a community, especially this core of a certain amount of people who are always present, always there, always active, you are still able to shape this community the way you want it to be. So yeah. Anyway, let's take a look at Manuel's work. Nice description about it, but dear Manuel gladly adds some more project info, especially in this case. While it is a work in progress, gladly share what your actual task is. Do you want to show the cabin? Do you want to show what's inside of it? Or do you want to show the garden or everything? It's important because the more precise you are with your description, the more precise the feedback to your work can be. This is simple as that. And always, please share the software combination that you have used to work on this project, because then the tips that we give, especially when it comes to improvement, can be more specific. Now, on the positive side, if we take a look at those images, I find the modeling to actually look quite nice and clean, good amount of detail to it. I really like the cladding. Here it seems like my guess would be that it's done with Rail Clone. There are some really nice presets for cladding in Rail Clone, so this seems to be one of them. Reminds me of it. We have Abdi here, he can tell better because he's very much into Rail Clone. Also, it's always great to see the interior instead of, always just having those white curtains that are closed, to actually see the interior on the inside. This is always great. It makes the house look lived in and more relatable in general. The materials go together well. There is this really nice variety to the cladding material. This makes it look lively and more realistic, more authentic. Generally speaking, the color scheme of the project I find to be pretty pleasant, very nature bound. You have the gray and the rest is more or less the three colors like green and beige and brown, which is very pleasant to look at, very, very natural looking. The scattering is really good. I really especially enjoy this part here, this nice transition between the grass field and the mulch. Looks really awesome. But also the other plants, you see how it is, it's all the same plant, but because of the rotation, the random positioning, the random scaling, it looks like every plant is a different one. And it's just awesome. This is why randomization is so important, because randomization often immediately means more authenticity and just a more lifelike image. Now, on the negative side, when it comes to improvements, I really agree with what Amjad and Chris wrote. I won't read it now, but you can read it for yourself. When it comes to the materials, let's start with them. If we take a look at the cladding material, you see that something isn't quite right with it. The texture on it seems quite stretched and not the way it's meant to be. Looks like a mapping issue. Maybe you even have, let's say, some box mapping to it, but you just temporarily disabled the modifier for some reason and then just forgot to re-enable it. Take care of this one for sure. Then we have some nasty texture repetitions that are very preventable. We see them here on those concrete stepstones and also on these stairs and the front door. Especially this one, this is really preventable. What the general suggestion and solution in situations like this is first to use a larger texture. The larger the texture, the better. So something which is like 100 by 100 centimeters or even 200 by 200 centimeters, because all of those objects are smaller than this. So the texture used as box mapping will cover it without any visible repetition, as it is the case in the moment. Additionally, with stepstones like this, it doesn't matter if this is one poly object and these are just elements of it, or if this is like, let's say, one object and its instances. No matter what it is, just use the UV randomizer with the box checked for instance or mesh element in order to have some randomization to the texture positioning so that there is no visible repetition here. And then when it comes to materials and colors in general, obvious thing, this is something what was mentioned in the feedback that you've become, is that the grass is very pale. So you need to make it more saturated, greener and darker, more like the base of those succulents here. And when it comes to this being pale and looking a bit washed out. This is something which not only is true for the grass, but actually for the general look of all of the shots that we have here. They look kind of pale and contrastless, and it's not that they lack this contrast on a certain elements, it's more like they're flat looking. It's like the lighting hierarchy that you have established here in combination with the color composition. And let's take a look at the color composition. Now, for example, you have this pretty mid-dark gray in front of dark green, for example. So there isn't this color contrast. It's just not there. So the combination of this lighting hierarchy, which is almost absent, and the color composition, the way it is, simply doesn't work. Also, the interior being that lit up during the day just looks fake. This isn't the way an interior looks during the day if everything on the inside isn't with like 1 million lumen to it, which is not how it should be, right? So the way it is now, the major issue that I have with this work is that the lighting is flat and nothing really sticks out. So I think in order to make it better, you really need to establish a clear lighting hierarchy and try to achieve a composition following the general photographic rules. So you need a certain contrast in terms of color, in terms of brightness, in order to make this work. Because the way it is now, let's quickly analyze it. Let's take a look at this. The way it is now, you know this very basic rule, how the brightest areas are usually the areas where the viewer concentrates the most immediately. So what we have here is this way. This is just a pathway to the house. It's obviously secondary. It's not important. Then we have some very, very bright background on both sides. Then we have some plants here. And then let's say we have the glazing. Okay? This is what we have, but actually this isn't how a good composition should be. So again, I took this image over in Photoshop and I worked a lot with it to show you a better version of how it is. And I want you in the comments to please give me your honest feedback. Which version do you think is better, is heading in a better direction, and looks more authentic, looks more realistic? If it's Manuel's, just say it as it is. So this was his version and this is mine. So you see there are some differences here. First of all, I made the grass darker, more saturated, so that it's more present. Here it's not so pale as it was in your case. The concrete stepstones I exchanged for these stone plates. This isn't a big thing. If you need to go with those concrete stepstones, just go with them, but be smart about them. First of all, if they have to be so bright, if they don't have to be so bright, make them darker. But if they have to be bright, then make sure to have some tree or something, throw some shadow on them so that they don't stick out that much. Next, your background should be desaturated and darker, and your facade should be brighter so that it pops out. Because if you compare those two images, you will see how here it's more like the other stuff that pops out more than the house, and in this case it's the house in general that pops out. Regarding the glazing, as I told you, the way you have depicted the glazing is absolutely just fake looking, because during the day windows are more reflective and generally look dark. You can still see some stuff on the inside, but the general look of windows or glazing during the day, especially on a brighter day like this one, is to be more reflective and dark. So this is how I think, this is the direction that I think you should be heading in, instead of just artificially darkening the grass in post-production as I did here. You can of course place a tree somewhere beside the camera that throws some shadow onto this area here so that the house sticks out even more. And one last thing regarding your work is the background. It seems to be an AI generated image, which is a very strange solution in my opinion. First of all, it's very visible because of this softness, because of some weird elements to it. And secondly, it doesn't even matter what viewing angle we have, the background image always stays the same. Just take a look at this. We see this house looking straight ahead at the house facade, and we see the same looking at the side or looking at a different angle. This obviously makes no sense. This simply isn't the way things work in real life. So a good solution here would be to just use an HDRI surrounding. And if the HDRI surrounding is, let's say, contains too much greenery, let's say it has those forest hills, but it doesn't have any houses, and you need to show some houses, then just use some house assets and some trees and bushes behind your house, like real 3D models, and then have the HDRI be just the surrounding. And in situation, it will not only fix your background issue, but it will only also give you those nice, awesome, realistic reflections that you need for situations like this. Because if you take a look at the surroundings of this bungalow in a situation like this, you will see that there is like tons of green hills around, but if you look at the reflections, you'll see that none of those hills or those forests are actually visible, which makes the house and the surroundings don't homogeneously fit and come together. So in conclusion, I don't know if you have finished the project in the meantime. I hope not. I hope you can do these improvements before you deliver it. But if you have already delivered it, before you add it to your portfolio, I really recommend reworking those aspects, especially the lighting hierarchy, the contrasts, and like this color and contrast composition, in order for the whole thing to work out and for the house, which is the main actor of this session, to really stick out. With this, I'm done with the project, but I see Abdi sharing his feedback. He says, I like the color grading that you've done, but he also should pay attention to the selected trees and bushes. Those in the background are very different as those placed in the garden. The vegetation combo should make some sense. This is absolutely true. Also, the bushes are penetration, the hedges, they should also be fixed. Well, yeah, of course. You should, before you delivered it, you should try to fix everything and deliver the most perfect image possible. But in order for this thing to actually work, the basics should be there. So if everything is like nicely done in terms of modeling and textures and so on, but the composition doesn't work, the lighting doesn't work, then you won't be able to really deliver a very convincing final result, in my opinion. We move on. Thanks, Abdi, for your feedback and for tuning in. We move over to Georgi with sharing this quick exterior he did in the span of 2 days. He writes, hello community, here is my next rendering and I look forward to your comments and evaluations. Working time is 2 days. It's done in Max and Corona. Let's take a look at this. You have a good description, by the way. Given that this is an exercise, however, gladly share some info on what your main goals were. Obviously, you wanted to make a nice scene. This is like self-explanatory, but at the same time, when you start an exercise, it is usually a good idea to define some major goals. Like, I want to make a sunset scene or a very nature-bound one or a forest scene or whatever, something. Then gladly share, when you share the project, also share some info on those major goals. And as I saw you in the comments, gladly share what was challenging to you while working on this project. Like, what was the most difficult part for you? In the meantime, we'll start talking about the modeling, which I think looks very nice. It has the right amount of detail to it. I'm always happy to see some furnished interiors, because again, this provides the viewer with this lived-in and more relatable feeling to the building, which is always a plus in my book. The scattering I like a lot as well, especially the scattering on the greenery here. It's cool to see occasional plant clusters. And generally speaking, the mix of different plants that you have used looks and behaves very authentic, because you have a lot. You have this meadow grass, the weeds in it, you have different types of shrubs, you have the ornamental grasses, you have flowers, all the trees, the boulders. All of this comes together in a very nice and natural way, which is great. The lighting is also very beautiful. It's sunny, but it's not this generic midday sun. It's rather this low sunset or maybe even sunrise. Not sure about it. Sometimes it's difficult to tell. With soft light, with those long shadows, it truly has a pleasant vibe to it. And what I really enjoy here is how you manage to control this lighting so that it's not just everything just bathing in sunlight, but it's mainly the building itself. And this is obviously something that you deliberately did in order for the house, which is the major element here, to stick out. And this is exactly what I meant talking about Manuel's project. You really need to make it work. You really need to make the composition and those basics work, and then atop of this solid foundation you can then start building more and more and making it more realistic and more authentic and more beautiful and whatsoever. But those basics, they should be really solid, because if they aren't, all the rest will crumble. Now I think to improve this one, I think that you can actually turn on those artificial light sources that you have on the facade, because first of all, they will add some nice lighting accents, especially on these shadowy sides of the building. Also, it's late afternoon or again early morning. It will make sense for them to be turned on, which isn't necessarily the case during the day or at noon, for example. And generally, one general thing when it comes to lighting, and it is, don't leave important, essential areas unlit. In this case, we have a house, and where there is a house, there is usually an entrance. And an entrance is one of the major elements of a house or of a house front. And the entrance currently is quite dark, and same with this terrace, let's say, on the backside. So I'll show you an example of mine. This project, you see the lighting here is pretty much contre-jour, so it's coming from the side, and all those sides of the building that we actually look upon are more or less in the shadows. However, despite this being so, I made sure to light up the entrance, to light it not only up from the outside but also from the inside. It's up to you to decide which type of lighting you prefer. In your case, you have this glassy entrance, so you can actually put some light on the inside, which is shining out. This is also a very good solution. But whatever it is, just make sure that those important parts of your building are nicely lit up. No matter where the sunlight comes from, there are just some elements that need proper lighting during all the times of the day. So in this case, I will recommend turning on, either putting some spots on the underside of this terrace, or just maybe lighting up the inside of the entrance so that it shines out. Next, we have this terrace here, but it's not perceivable as such. So what I recommend here is adding some furniture, some typical patio furniture, maybe a sunshade, some whatever, some outdoor furniture, some seating, a table, some plants maybe, so that this terrace becomes something that looks like people are already using and enjoying. Regarding the materials, some of the materials can be improved. Actually, the wooden plank material especially, currently it looks very flat. It looks more like some kind of veneer. Personally, I always prefer the floor gen and some actual real geometry for situations like this. I know it makes the scene a tiny bit heavier, but in my opinion, real geometry always looks better, more authentic, more realistic, and more convincing than just a flat texture. Next thing is the driveway material. to me it looks kind of weird, kind of too soft and bubbly, especially in this area here. I don't know, maybe checked the displacement map, maybe it has some blurriness to it which makes it look like this. Or just, if you cannot fix it, maybe go for a different material. Given the location, I will definitely recommend some, probably gravel, just gravel. I think it will look pretty cool for a driveway for a house in such a surrounding. And lastly we have this parapet, I don't know how it's called, like parapet wall or roof material. In a moment it seems rather basic. I think that adding some subtle surface imperfections, some dirt, or maybe at least some noise to the reflectivity and glossiness of this material would make it look cooler. Next thing is the scattered leaves. I praised your other scattering of the greenery, but the leaves look a bit fakish. First of all, they seem rather large, also quite dark and saturated, so gladly they saturate them, brighten them up a bit, and also scatter some leaves also in the middle of the driveway lane, because if somebody wasn't sweeping all the leaves in the exact same moment, there will always be some single leaves here and there, and not only those clusters around the edges. And last but not least, composition wise, I think that the shot can be improved a bit. First of all, those trees, those birch trees, this one in the corner and this one here, which is covering a large portion of the terrace, I would personally remove. If you want to have some trees there, gladly maybe use something like this rowan here. It's a part of the Cosmos gallery. As you see, it's just very young, it's a very small and tiny tree. You can still place it in front of the house, but it won't cover as much of it as those birch trees do. And the other thing is, I don't think that the cropping is very balanced at the moment. Like, I think that the bottom of this image could profit from some extended cropping. So I tried it out. This is your image, and this is the extended cropping, the extended framing of it. Personally, I find it to be more balanced this way. As you see, I also added this tree in the corner with a branch overhanging the image and kind of closing this composition. And in this front area, in order for it to not be too monotonous, I added this boulder, which is like a counterweight to what's happening here. But with this being said, this is one really, really nice exercise of yours, dear Georgi. And as you tend to be somebody who listens to feedback and actually go back and rework their stuff, I really recommend playing around with the topics that we just talked about. And once you fix all of them, gladly experiment with additional angles, because you have already built this elaborate large scene, so why not make the most out of it, right? And with this, we can move on to the next project, which is Flatson's. I hope he can still understand me despite my robotic voice. I'll just take a sip of water and we can talk about it. So Flatson writes, hello my friends, modeling and visualization is super génial. No, it's not nivel, it's super nivel. Software used is SketchUp and V-Ray 6. The description is recent work from my studio. This was a kitchen remodeling project in an apartment here in my city, Luanda, Angola. I'm glad to say that the client was satisfied with the visualization of his project, and I can fully understand why. This is really, really cool project of yours, dear Flatson. The description of it is also awesome as usual. The image presentation is also pretty good, nicely varied. The only issue I have with it is there is this one image that has a different tone mapping than the other ones. This one, which doesn't visually fit and kind of breaks the consistency of those images. But we'll take a look at those, a more detailed look. I see Chihan joined us. Hi, nice to see you. We talk about Flatson's work, which is a work that the group members seem to like a lot, and it's understandably so. You have also received some really nice feedback from Amit, a very detailed one. Really like this one. And yeah, there is a lot to like about this project. I find the interior design itself to be pretty cool. This is a subjective thing, of course, but to me, this color palette is very pleasant for a kitchen. Also, the whole space looks really functional, really good to use. The modeling and the assets that you have used, I'll stay at this scene because this is a good example of it, are also very nice. Maybe you can add a bit more detail to your windows in general, but other than that, I find the modeling to be on point, and those assets that you have used, they're really, again, also the right choice because it's not too much, it's not like overdone, but at the same time, it's not just this catalog, too minimalistic, too clean space. It shows that people are actually living there, that they're actually using this space, which I think is always awesome to see. And generally speaking, the whole mood of this project is just down to earth, really inviting, really welcoming to the people who live there. So I'm a fan, as you can probably tell. Now, next topic, I think we can just start going through the images one by one and talking about them more in detail. The first one, this is the first shot. I find it very good in terms of lighting, materials, the reflections I really like here a lot. The backdrop is great, I think it's 3D and it looks really nice. What is not so optimal here, I find to be the composition and the framing. Because the right side here is like too empty, there is not much happening there, there is not much of information that the viewer gets out of this part here. So let us concentrate on this part. The remaining parts of the image don't really contain much stuff of interest. Yeah, we see that there is another spot on the ceiling, we see that there is a socket on the wall, but that's about it. So I think that it would be better if you would shift the whole camera to the left, and maybe if you shift it also downwards a bit so that you don't cut off the legs of these bar stools. Now, if you want to keep the height of your camera, I also understand it, because if you shift the camera downwards, it will also make it impossible to see, let's say, the lower cupboard fronts. I understand this. So what you can do is just extend your cropping downwards. So I went and played around with this a bit with the help of generative fill and Photoshop, and this is the result. And to me, this is better framing in general, because first of all, you don't cut off any of the major elements as the bar stools, and you remove this part which doesn't provide any further information about this space at all, which was here to the right. And to me, this one is a more balanced version of this shot. Now let's move to the second shot. It is a very informative one because it shows the whole kitchen area, which is great because we see it from wall to wall, and it also provides the viewer with this visual connection between the living room and the kitchen. Now the issues here is the tone mapping. We already talked about this. If you take a look at the other shots, they all have this more bluish, greenish, let's say, tint to them, and this one has more of an orange tint. The issue here, or the cause of this, is probably color bleeding, and you as a V-Ray and SketchUp user, your way to remove color bleeding is by using an override material. You see it here. So we have this example, again, it's the Chaos Dogs. You know, I love the Chaos Dogs. They are really, really informative and have all those awesome examples that you can really see what the material or the map is actually about. So in this case, we have this nice slider here, and on the first version of the shot, without the material override, we have this heavy color bleeding coming from the parquet floor, and with material override, the color bleeding is just gone. And I think that this will probably be the solution in your case. Now, if you are a Corona user, then you can, of course, use Corona ray switch map or a Corona ray switch material, which more or less does the same. You see here the heavy color bleeding from the orange floor, and then the color bleeding is completely gone. Now, I have mixed feelings about color bleeding, to be honest, because color bleeding is a normal phenomenon. It just happens when you have something which is colorful and there is light on it. It's normal for this light to scatter up on other surfaces. So completely removing it is kind of fakish. On the other side, however, heavy color bleeding is never a good thing. It never looks good, so sometimes we just have to. And the second thing about this composition here is that there is a lot of empty ceiling area which you actually don't need. So I think if you were to discard the portrait mode and go for a landscape framing in this case, I think that the composition will be, the whole image will be better, because as you see, the areas that I just cut off, nothing was lost, nothing of value at least, was lost on them. Next we have the other shot. This is the third shot, and here we have more or less the same situation as it was with the first shot. There is a bit of an empty area here where nothing happens, and again the legs of some furniture have been cut off. So as you may imagine, I went and fixed it the way I think this should look like, so something like this. You see I extended the cropping downwards, now the legs are not cut off, this as well, and maybe then use some depth of field on this sofa cushion, and then I think you have a better and more balanced composition. And then we have the last shot, and Amit guessed it in his review or in his feedback to your work. It's a great shot, it's a very pleasant one. I really love that the kitchen designers actually decide to leave so much space here. This is a huge quality of this kitchen, because it enables for two people to simultaneously use the kitchen. One can do something on the counter, where at the same time somebody else can do something here. So this is great. But for the image, we end up with this empty space in the middle where nothing happens. So there are usually a few ways to go about this. So one thing is to have some very interesting reflections. The other thing would be, the other option would be to have some interesting shadows coming from the outside, some very nice looking shadows, which would be interesting enough to look at. Or you can add some non-heavy movable object to the scene. For example, a Roomba, gladly with motion blur, or a cat or a dog, some animal just moving here. This will add dynamic, but it won't make the scene to be heavy, because if you were to place some heavy object here, then the kitchen will look cluttered, and this quality of it, that it has so much empty space for people to actually move freely, will be lost. So what you need to put there is something temporary, something which is just temporarily there but will then go. So this is why things like a Roomba or an animal are good. Alternatively, there are these small kids stools. They are like climbing towers where the kids can just go up a step and then they can see what happens on the counter. You can place something like this, because again, this is one of these movable objects that are now here and the next moment somewhere else. They don't give this whole space a heavy feeling. But yeah, this is all about the project. It's a great work. I'm very happy to hear that your client was satisfied. I can totally understand why. It's a great work again. Just maybe pay a bit more attention to your compositions and your framings, and then it's great. Next we have something very interesting. It's Ravindu with his first project in this group. He writes, "Hello my friends, here is my first image posting here. So I used some 3D assets to build this scene. How is it? Please tell me every mistake you see. Thank you so much, Ravindu from Sri Lanka." First of all, nice presentation, Ravindu, very kind. welcome to the group. When you share your work, this looks like a personal exercise. Because it's your first time, let me explain it once again. Please also share the goals of this exercise, what exactly you wanted to achieve or what certain aspects you wanted to train. And also, gladly the software combination you did all of this in, so that the tips that you receive and the feedback can be a bit more specific. Like you just saw it with Flatson's work, I talked about how he can do it in the software that he uses, which is V-Ray for SketchUp. So I talked about overriding and not about the ray switch map or material in Corona, because he simply isn't a Corona user. So yeah, viewing your image, let's enlarge it a bit. Viewing your image, first thing that comes to my mind, it's actually two things, is that it's a really, really interesting and exciting setting. And the second thing is that it's way too hazy, and because of it, I don't get to see it properly. So let's elaborate. First, on the positive side, I see Flatson saying, thanks Theo, I will work on these aspects. I know you will, you always improve, and that's why your work is so awesome. So first the good. The design of the scene is really exciting. I really like it. It looks like some kind of a Buddhist complex facility, maybe part of a temple. It could be a setting for some adventure movie, computer game, or even a documentary. It's really cool. The architecture is appealing, and the whole scenery is very pleasantly composed, in my opinion. The lighting creates a nice and almost mysterious mood, which obviously very much fits this setting. And it also beautifully illuminates this pond. However, you have this combination of this contre-jour shot. You see the sun is almost visible here in the corner, so we are facing it, and every time we face our light source, it's more or less this contre-jour effect that we have in combination with this heavy haze that you have put with the volume material. And it's just too much, because it leads to the volumetrics becoming almost emissive and washing out the image. And the thing is, washing out the image sounds maybe a bit too general, so let's take a look at it in particular. So you see what happens. The corners of this image, or the edges, let's say, we see the tree here or the pond with its plants. Clearly, towards the edges, the image is clear, very visible, very crisp, very nicely contrasting. The middle, the center of the image, however, where the things are situated that we are actually supposed to look at and supposed to be of interest, is hazy and washed out. And this obviously isn't a good thing. Now, I will show you an example. I searched for some examples of this. This combination of light, like this contre-jour light and haze, isn't something new. It's something that is often used in images, but it has to be, the usage of it has to be very wisely controlled. Like in this case, for example, you see there is this big abandoned structure which has all those holes in it. There is some light from the outside of this structure streaming in, and that's why this is hazy and this is kind of washed out, because we don't want to see the details of the structure. We want to get this eerie feeling of this gigantic structure, abandoned structure around us, and how small the person is in comparison to it. This is why the edge here is so contrasty. This is why it's so nicely visible, and the rest is just like this angelic, out of this world optic. In your case, however, there are things that we actually want to see, like the facades here, the Buddha statue, and those things are exactly the things that are washed out, and the things that are secondary that we don't want to see that much, like those branches here or the plants in the pond, they are very clear. So obviously there is one solution here, or there are more solutions. Let's start with Abdi Solutions. Abdi, also known as Ace Art 3D and Motion Graphics. He went the post-production tour, which is definitely a big improvement. as you can see here, because now we see the architecture better with more contrast, without so much haze. This is definitely a big improvement, and it's awesome of Abdi to actually invest the time to take your image and work on its color mapping and on its contrast to show you what he means or how it could be improved. And the second thing is, if, like, I don't want to say my solution, I think that if asked, Abdi would say the same, is to go back even a step further to your actual 3D scene and re-render it. When you do so, you have to make sure to increase the absorption distance of your volume material, and most of all, the emission distance of it, because let's take a look together what a difference it makes. Here we have an absorption distance of 50 meters. Take a look at the house. And now we have an absorption distance of 150 meters. And now with the emission distance, which is more like your case, you're somewhere here, I would say almost, it's like 25 meters, and here it's 150 meters. And you see how much clearer the objects become. So my suggestion is to really go back to the model and try to work more with the lighting and with the volume material until you achieve a more controlled result. Like in this case, you have the Buddha statue, for example, so maybe you can manage to make it work that you get some God rays around Buddha, which will of course even enhance the whole impact of the situation, instead of just bleaching out or washing out these middle areas. And while you're at it, please take a look at those texture repetition. You can easily fix it using the UV randomization map in either Corona or V-Ray. Just make sure to click the randomize each tile box in order for the tiles to be randomized even in areas like this. But with this being said, really cool scene. Just tweak the light and the volumetrics of it and get rid of this texture repetition, and it will become even cooler. Now let's move on to the next two shots, which I won't be talking about today because I want to talk about them on the next show when we will discuss this whole challenge. But they look really, really awesome. I gotta say this. This one is made by Abdi, very atmospheric, very, very cool. And this one is made by Kama, also another really, really cool image. So we'll talk about those on the next show, depending on the number of entries that we'll have for our challenge. I will probably dedicate the whole next show to them, but if it's just a handful, then we will be able to talk about them and then still discuss two or three other works that have been regularly posted. Abdi says re-rendering wouldn't hurt at all. The windows also need more reflections, and those could also be fixed when re-rendering. Of course. When you go back, then try to make everything perfect, but I always try to concentrate on those main topics, which in this case definitely is the lighting and volumetrics issue. But yeah, I agree absolutely about the windows. Next, we have Reza with some really elegant minimalism. He writes minimal interior design and rendering done by Reza Amiri, so by himself. Description is okay. I'm just missing the info on, as I say it for a third time today, I think, the software combination that you used for this, and also the type of project that this is. I can imagine that this is a personal work, but it could also be a commercial one, so glad you write this down. Regarding the image presentation, however, it's quite good, nicely varied angles and great visual consistency throughout all the images, so great one. Let's take a closer look. First and foremost, it needs to be said that a project like this is really difficult to pull off because it's mostly a monochromatic color scheme. It's this beige in all of its tonalities up until almost white, with a touch of green here and there. You can see that there is the green tree here, and then we have those 3 green apples, but more or less it's just monochromatic, which is, again, difficult to work with. But Reza did a really good job with this one, modeling assets look really good. It's one of those catalog like scenes. It's very clean, but everything seems to have its right place, the right amount of details, not too many, but also not too few. The type of assets used is also feels like it's the right one. So it's very nicely done so far. Material wise, it's pretty much the same as with the modeling. Elegant and minimalistic texturing and mapping. It's just good. I really like the carpet, by the way. Gladly share with us where you got it from, because finding good carpets is not always easy. Let's put it like this. The lighting I find to generally be nice. It's pleasant. Partially maybe it makes the scene feel a bit underexposed, but it does the work. Now let's take a look at the angles one by one, starting with this one. It's this very nice central perspective. We have those very balanced lighting to it. On the left side we have the windows letting the natural light in, and on the right side we have this projection of the beamer here. So it seems like we have light on both sides, on both walls, which makes for an even more symmetrical looking image. What I really like here, I think that it's not the beamer, I think that it's actually the natural light causing this effect, but it seems like this lantern here throws some shadow, which would actually be the case if the beamer was indeed projecting this movie onto the wall. Now, functionally speaking, because, you know, I'm an architect, I always have an eye for this, you wouldn't place your beamer to project on a wall which is on the opposite side of windows, because on a sunny day you won't see anything on this wall, on this projection. But this is just a nitpick, so not so important. Now, what we have here is some lighting on the couch. This is just a small issue here. We have this lighting on the couch, and the only light source that I can think of about it is this lamp that we also see on the third shot here. But there is a small issue that the lamp isn't turned on. So you can very easily fix this one, just to add some self-illumination to some of the materials, or maybe, I don't know, just make some light material with just a low emit value somewhere on the inside and then call it a day, just so that it looks like this lamp is actually turned on in order to provide this light, right? Then we have the second shot, which is just awesome. It is greatly composed and implemented. And this is a great example of one of those less is more shots. Everything about it is just right. The depth of field, and you know, you have Cillian Murphy's face being like half of this shot, and yeah, it's not needed much more to make it a great one, right? Next, we have the third shot, which is a very nice perspective. However, the composition is not optimal. The horizontal framing is great. It's just exactly as it should be, but the vertical framing needs improvement. I think you just need to shift the whole camera downwards, and it will just be better framing overall. So I will show you, I played around with it. So this is your shot, and this is what happens when you shift the camera downwards. So you don't cut off the tip of this rug, you don't cut off the stand of the lamp, and also the cable here. It just looks more balanced this way. And regarding the tone mapping of all of your shots is very consistent, but it's kind of muted and maybe a tad too warm. So it's a matter of taste, of course. It's not one of those true or false topics, but if you want a more realistic look, I suggest shifting the color temperature of your tone mapping in the cold direction and adding some more contrast, so that the image ends up being something like this. I think that this just looks more realistic. But again, there is nothing wrong with having a tone mapping in a certain style, even if this is not so realistic. That's okay. And one last thing, the background about this image, the background is there, it's visible, but it's actually barely visible. So it's too overexposed. So up to the point where it just looks completely white. So my suggestion for a solution is just try on Polyheaven. There are tons of HDRIs. You'll definitely find one which is laid back, which doesn't have like a ton of stuff, because you have this very controlled, very minimalistic interior, and you don't need like millions of things happening on the outside. But you will certainly find something which is calm on the outside, and then you can just desaturate it and make it brighter, but not as bright as it is now. Then we can go over to the next shot, which I really, really like. It's a beautiful close-up, very nicely composed because of the depth of field. It's really cool. The focus of this shot is great. It's also nice that the soundbar, it's there, but you didn't cut it off, and we still have something happening in the distant background. I think this is pretty awesome. I see Abdi saying maybe some darker curtains could help when watching a movie or something. Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. I mean, you just need non-transparent curtains, but then you're bound to always closing them if you want to watch something with your beamer as a projection. That's just it. Next, we have another very nice close-up. This one looks more like a product shot for, let's say, this sink or this faucet or the combination of both. But I really like the apples that you have added to it, because this makes it like more lively and more relatable and not just like an ad shot. And then we have another very nice shot, in my opinion, with really pleasant framing to it. You can gladly extend it downwards a bit, but it's not a mandatory thing. It's nice the way it is. So with this being said, this is a really cool project. I'm looking forward to seeing more of your works in this group. Gladly just fix the framing on this shot, and if you want a bit of a more realistic result, play around with different tone mappings, maybe again a bit of a more cold ones. And with this, next we have Flatson sharing with us a tutorial from his channel on YouTube about lighting up scenes with an HDRI until reaching a result like this. This is some really good lighting in this case, so gladly take a look at the tutorial. It's in Portuguese, but there are English subtitles to it, so you can watch it even if you don't speak Portuguese. And yeah, go drop Flatson a like. Next we have something which is very interesting. I know Muad joined us here because, and that's really cool that we can talk about this project, because there is something very interesting about it, okay? So Muad writes, "Hello friends, my latest project, an internet cafe space, design, modeling and rendering done by Muad. Software is 3ds Max and V-Ray. Good description. I would only want to know if this is a commercial or a personal exercise." And I asked Muad, and he said that this is actually a commercial project, which makes it even more interesting, in my opinion. And now let's talk about the image presentation. This is one of the important points for this project, because as you can see, I often talk about if the images are visually consistent, and they are. In this case, they absolutely are. I also talk about the angles, if they're varied or if it's like more or less the same. Now, they are varied, like each camera shows in a different direction, but the scale of them is kind of always the same. It's always a person standing somewhere and showing the rest of the room. So if you want to add a bit of variety to your images here, then it would be nice if you would also do a few close-ups. Even if your client doesn't want them, you can do them on your own. After the project is finished, you can just go around and make some nice close-ups here and there, and then you can mix them within all the other images so that you have a bit more varied and diverse set of images to present. But the major thing is that the general impression of those images and the space itself is that it is overloaded. If you take a look at this, there is so much to take in that people actually a lot of viewers wouldn't want to click on this +3 to see the rest, because they already feel overwhelmed by this preview here. And this is why a project which is actually very nicely done in its core, we'll talk about it in a minute, doesn't have more likes than this. Let's take a closer look. Now, first, The scene is very elaborate. There is a lot going on in it. It's an internet cafe, so there is obviously a ton of technical stuff, monitors, keyboards, mice, headphones, printers, routers, stuff on the table. It's just a lot. Then we have the different types of furniture. We have the front desk, we have those single niche workspaces, chairs, couches, whatnot. Then we have lots of decorations like plants, lamps. We have the neon signs by the door. Where was it? Then also lots of different materials and surfaces. So we have let's take a look at one image which nicely represents this. So, we have the wooden floor, we have a brick wall by the entrance, we have walls painted in various colors, we have stripes on the ceiling, we have zigzags on the ceilings as well. It's just a ton of stuff coming together in this project. Now, let's talk about the good parts of it first. The modeling, despite all of the amount of work needed to pull this off, the modeling is really solid and detailed. It looks nice. Even if you take a closer look at it, it's really nice. What you did greatly, and I really want to praise this, is the randomization of your elements. Let's take a look at this scene, for example. So you see in the front here, we have those 5 chairs. It's the instance of one and the same chair. But it doesn't look like a copy-pasted thing. It looks like 5 different chairs. And why is that? It's because Muat managed to actually add some really nice, authentic looking randomness to this situation here. If we take a look at it from the side, you will see that all the 5 chairs have different positioning to them. And in front of the chairs, there are also different types of monitors. If we go back here, you will see we have a small monitor, 2 big ones, one small again, and another big one. So this randomness is something which makes this feel authentic, because real life isn't perfection. Real life is rather random than perfectly ordered. And what you have here is also only one monitor being turned on and not all of them. And what this leads to is, you see how this chair here looks almost bluish, has this bluish appearance because it's a leather chair and it's reflecting the blue screen of this monitor. The chair to the right and the left of this monitor also have these blue highlights, which makes them look different than the other chairs, let's say these two. And then these two, they are differently positioned and they also have different light coming onto them. And with all of this, it looks like there are just 5 completely different chairs, even though it is just one and the same set. So randomness is extremely important for authenticity. And remember, randomness doesn't mean disorder, right? Because if we think about it, let's take a look at this one. This is exactly what I wanted to achieve here. You see the bar stools and the chairs belonging to those long tables. They are not random. If you take a general look at this space, you will see how the bar chairs are actually part of this counter, and those chairs here belong to those tables, and it's clearly visible at first glance. If you take a closer look, however, you see that the bar chairs just look like somebody pushed them up right to the counter just so that they can free up this walkway space here, but it's not like perfect. Here, if we take a look at those chairs, you will see that those two have a large gap between them and those two are very close to each other. Still, this is not a disorder. It's just not perfectly ordered, but it adds a layer of authenticity to your work. So this is something that I really wanted to praise because it is great. And another thing that I really like a lot is, first of all, the transition between the natural lighting and the artificial lighting. It's very nicely visible on this shot. It's a very good transition because at some point the outdoor, the natural lighting stops and the artificial lighting takes over, but we don't see this point, and this is exactly how it actually should be. And one last thing when it comes, because we see the background image, this is probably an HDRI that Muat used in this case. This is very nicely implemented. It makes this whole internet cafe feel grounded located somewhere. It's not just white on the outside. There is something on the outside. But even if you never look out, there is something else. Just let us take a look at those glass cabinets here. You will see that there are some really great reflections and refractions in them. Just take a look at this car reflecting. It's again a layer of realism and authenticity atop of your surfaces. Because I often talk about this for interiors, because people tend to just place a white plane on the outside of the windows and call it a day. But then on the inside, what reflective surfaces have to reflect and refractive surfaces have to refract is just white. So obviously it won't look very realistic and detailed. In this case, however, you can see how nicely those reflections make everything look very, very authentic and realistic. Flatson says dope, and yeah, this is truly what it is. Now, it's time for the negative part of this review. First of all, I'm not sure if all aspects of this design really work. Let me find a good image where I can show this. Let's start off with those single workspace niches. I personally don't think that they work. First of all, they're very narrow. It's like the chair barely fits in them. I cannot imagine somebody actually going to sit in them. I think that once implemented, this thing just needs to be larger. Here you can see the entrance to those. It's only a child that can fit inside, because I'm too fat to fit in there. Let's be honest. And when it comes to the general design, I find it to be kind of too random. It's just a wild mix of tons of different elements, styles, and ideas, which kind of makes it difficult to fall in love with this concept, to be honest. It's again a subjective opinion, a subjective matter. It's just my opinion. But on the other hand, let's not forget that this is an internet cafe. So to paraphrase Douglas Adams on this, nobody has ever said, wow, you're as beautiful as an internet cafe, right? It's just not the type of space that really needs to be that beautiful. It should be useful. It should be maybe funky for the youth or for whatever, but it's not meant to be something like some classy restaurant or bar or whatever. So I don't know if this is so important. And the next thing is, your framings are often very naturalistic and authentic looking, but often also not very attractive. And the reason for this is that they just like you. They look like you just packed your smartphone, went into this internet cafe, and just started taking photos without considering stuff like composition or whatever. It was just, let me place myself in different corners of this space and then just make photos so that people see what it is. So a lot of the angles are more or less give this feeling of somebody saying, just look at this, look at the whole thing here, because I don't want to show you anything in particular. And my advice would be to try to be more specific with this topic. Like when you have stuff in the foreground which is not of severe importance, gladly blur it out with depth of field and try to focus more on something specific. Be aware what exactly you want to show the viewer. Like this shot, it's very authentic. It looks very lifelike, but it's not an appealing shot because I don't know what to look at. I look at like everything and nothing at the same time. So maybe try to figure out what exactly you want to show the viewer, what you want your viewer to see. And of course, they will see some other stuff along those main goals of yours, but they will still have to see this one thing or two things that you mostly want to show them. And in this case, again, it's just everything. So my suggestion is do some reading on those general photographic rules of composition and see how you can make it work. A good example somewhere where it worked is like this one, because here at least you have this central perspective which makes for an eye-pleasing image already. And then it's, we have some kind of hierarchy to this shot. So we see this front desk with the 5 PCs to them. Then we see to the left and the right those single workplaces, the two glass cabinets with stuff to be sold in them, and it just kind of makes more sense and it's more pleasant to look at. But don't go for those. I just randomly turn the camera somewhere and place render and press render, and then it will work, because the images don't end up appealing. And this is part of the reason a project which is actually very solidly implemented like this one didn't get more love in the group, in my opinion. So again, I think you did a very good job visualizing the space, and I can imagine that once this thing gets implemented in real life, it will look very similar to what you have depicted here. I hope those niches get a bit wider so that people of average size can fit into them and not only kids. But yeah, anyway, if you concentrate more on this artistic side of our job, on the compositional side, on storytelling, on making beautiful images, it will be great for you, because you already have a very solid base when it comes to modeling, texturing, and just investing the amount of work needed to make a complex space like this work. Next we have Amir with Just for Fun and Imagination. Dear Amir, as you know, when you share AI, please make sure to point it out as such. I mean, in this case, obviously it's not a render, it's just AI, but still, let us be clear about this. I like the image though. I enjoy this setting. Not sure exactly how volleyball with two nets works, but this is an inspiring image. I also like that there are like 4 moons and only one of them is on. Now, next we have this 360 from Flatson's apartment. It's great to see this. Next time maybe just add it to your project so we can talk about it while we talk about the project. But it must be said, with all of its drawbacks and negative sides, it's really awesome how in Facebook you can just place a 360 image and it immediately works, and it works really, really fine. Now, because we have this live session, everything is a bit slower, but if you do it on your own, it makes me dizzy. I don't know why this is so slow. I'll just stop it. But if without the show happening at the same time, it just works as a charm, and it's really a great way to showcase these two spaces. So great work again, Flatson. Moad said, thanks Theo for the feedback. I'll work on it. Looking forward to your next one. And as the last project for today, we have Super. We're already a bit over the 1.5 hours, but I'll gladly talk about this one because it's actually a nice, small, but good work. Super writes bathroom interior design based on black and white with light orange color palette done in Rhinoceros and V-Ray. It's a Rhino project. We don't often get to see Rhino projects. As a former Rhino user, I'm always happy to see them. Dear Super, good description of your work. Gladly share if it is a personal exercise or a commercial one. I assume it's a commercial one because, I don't know, it just looks like one. The image presentation is pretty good though. The angles are nicely varied. Just one thing, if you have a clay model and it's a clay model of the very first image, I suggest just putting it as the last image in when you order the images to upload, so that it's still next to your first one, because once you reach the last image and you click on the next arrow, you've landed the first one. So the two images will still be next to each other as they are now, but it won't interrupt the order of your other images, and you suddenly have this clay image just in between. Now, review-wise, we can just go through the images one by one pretty quickly. Generally speaking, I can say that the work leaves a very positive impression on me. The bathroom that you've depicted here looks functional. It's also mostly aesthetically pleasing, actually, to me at least. The modeling and texturing of it also look quite solid. The color combination works really good. Let me go to the, I think it was this shot, where it's very, very nicely visible, because you have this white marble with those black veins and those beige orangish spots in them. And then in combination with the brass on handles, hinges, faucets, flush buttons and so on, and it just fits so nicely, and it's just so great to see those two very, very vastly different materials combine so well. So it's really great in this regard. The lighting works, I'd say it just does, but it's not really emotional. Like, you have this large window, you can just let some sunlight in, right? Let me show you this example of mine. You know this work. Like, I had this large window through the side. It's not as large as yours, by the way, but I just let some natural light stream in form of sunbeams, so that things like this can happen, because they just add a lot of emotion and mood and also slight dynamic to your shot. So maybe you can consider this. Partially, it is maybe also a bit unbalanced when we take a look at this area around the sink, because it looks like the floor underneath the sink is actually better lit up than the mirror area, where a person actually wants to see themselves rather than see their very greatly lit up feet, right? And when it comes to the compositions, we can quickly go through the images one by one. Starting with the first one, it's okay to me. I think it would be better if we were able to see this whole black wall from its beginning up to the ceiling. It would just give a more complete feel about this, but the way it is now, it is okay. It just kind of feels strange in proportions, as if the camera is too low, or as if this washing table here is kind of too high, unreasonably so. The second shot is actually pretty good. I like the framing of it. You managed to not cut off anything of importance and to actually nicely frame it. It is pretty cool. Same with this third shot, really good framing again. You see you've managed to fit in everything and to also leave a bit of space towards the end, so it just works, the framing on this one. Then we have another pretty nice one. It kind of feels a bit cramped because you have those very dark, actually black pieces of furniture, you know, the bidet, the bathtub, the wall radiator here, and also the dark window. So it's kind of filled with those very dark things. So maybe extending the cropping of it to the top and bottom will give it a bit more space to breathe. Like, if this is the original and you extend it a bit, then it won't feel as cramped as it did before. Next we have this shot. It's again nice, but it shows a certain design flow, because it looks like this door of this shelf or cupboard here simply won't be able to open because of the bathtub, which is a bit of a pity. So if there is, sometimes there are design flows like this, often they are not an issue on your side, but on the side of the designers. But then maybe try not to make images that thematize them. And then we have the last shot. I really enjoyed the depth of field on it, the blur on the toilet bowl and the bidet. I think that this towel holder is kind of too much. I don't think it's needed, especially when you have this wall radiator here, or towel radiator. So just maybe get rid of it if possible. But in conclusion, this is one really solid work of yours. I really like it. And next we have Tilina. We talked about Tilina's project. This one is inspired by a magnolia. It's very visible, almost too much. To be honest, for my personal taste, it's almost like it's a magnolia blossom just turned upside down. So I'm personally missing a bit of this element of stylizing your inspirations and turning them into something that resembles them but is not quite them. This to me is just a bit too literal, but nevertheless it looks quite cool. And if this was like a real life building, I know that my girls will absolutely love it. We have then Amir's project, which I will probably give him some written feedback because there is a lot to talk about. And last but not least, Chihan's work, which I was not sure if this is like his contribution to the challenge or not. I mean, it's a winter in the city, definitely. So it will fit, but he didn't use this hashtag, or Jihan, you are here in the comments. If this is supposed to be an entry for the challenge, please mark it as such. Use this winter in the city hashtag so that I know it's a part of the challenge and can consider it while taking a look at who's going to be first, second, and third. And with this being said, we're at the end of today's show. It was again an hour and 40 minutes, but yeah, 2 consequent shows we make under 2 hours and a lot under 2 hours. So we're getting there, definitely. And again, the next show will be on February 6th. So normal, but the one after this we'll skip so that we start this bi-monthly show happening. Let's see how it goes. With this being said, let me tell you, stay safe. Have a good rest of the week. I, of course, hope to see you again next week, next Tuesday at the same time, the same place. Rock on. Stay healthy. Bye, folks. It was a pleasure as always.